Hey, what's up, folks? Welcome back to On Texas Football, and welcome back to your Tuesday night live stream. I'm lifetime Longhorn Rod Davis. Pleased to be joined by fellow lifetime Longhorn, the young prodigy CJ Vogel, and the newest member of the On Texas Football family, my esteemed colleague and good friend as well, Jeff Howell, joining us for the Tuesday night live stream. So we appreciate all of you guys for joining us, no matter where you're joining us from. Y'all know how it works, all right? You guys drive the show any direction you want to. Throw out your questions, throw out your comments. We'll try to address as many of them as we can. Super chats jump to the front of the line. You can interrupt the show at any time. Thank you, CB. Tommy Nobis days. All right, till Texas kicks off.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, ain't no question about that. Yeah, happy B-Day to Van Malone, Casey Studdard, and Garrett Gilbert. Are you talking about all three of those Longhorns share a B-Day? That's why I love my man CB. Always keeping us in the know. Appreciate you.
Van Malone once coached at K-State, and Garrett Gilbert once threw, I think, 5 picks in a game at K-State. So
okay. Do we need that? Do we need that little factoid?
Yeah.
No, but I've got plenty of good ones, so I figured I'd get my bad one out of the way at the start.
Yeah, that was one of those. If we ever had a ranking of the worst games by a quarterback in Texas football history, it would be up there on the list. I mean, that was one of those.
I was at a Mavericks game that night. That night, Rod, and I kept getting the updates on my phone. I was like, somebody ribbing me? Like, they sending me like the same text over and over? I'm like, no, it's a different one.
Yeah, that was the purple kryptonite doing its worst. We all remember those. David Ash was absolutely incredulous over his punting skills. No, I gotta tell you, David Ash, we did an interview with David Ash on Third and Longhorn, and I'm gonna tell you, it was a banger. I'm not kidding with y'all. It blew me away. It was an absolute banger. David Ash is phenomenal, like just the personality wise. Because I hadn't gotten a chance to hang out with him. I had met David Ash before, and and met him in passing, but never like hung out with him for a long extended period of time and had him like open up with the crew. If you ain't checked out that David Ash Third Longhorn, please do. It's great. He speaks of his arm like it's a separate entity, like it's got its own personality. And it has good days and bad days. Yeah, it wasn't. It like he would like no, like before his best games, before some of them, he said basically like my arm, like I would take some throws, in warm ups, and I'd go, he's live today. He's ready to roll. He's live today. You know what I mean? He had some great stories. So I would encourage y'all to do that because I was blown away. That was one of the more pleasant surprises on Third and Long. I just didn't know what to expect, and I did expect what I got, and what we got was a fantastic sit-down interview with David Ash. It was really, you would enjoy it, Jeff. I'm telling you, you would love it.
To bring it back to the top, I think Garrett Gilbert and David Ash, because Garrett transferred to SMU, ended up getting drafted, part of a Super Bowl team with the Patriots. And stuck around in the league for a while. Garrett's deal, he was kind of what we used to call these in baseball, right? They used to call them 4A players. Like they're better than most AAA players, but not quite good enough as most major leaguers. That's kind of what Garrett was as a quarterback. Like with a year he was in the American Alliance of Pro Football or whatever.
Like that.
Dominated, but just wasn't quite, starting material in the NFL. But I think I can say this about both guys.
You are, by the way.
Right. Had the ecosystem been different for both of them at Texas, their careers could have played out very differently. Had Texas just kept the same kind of West Coast tempo passing game offense going for Garrett like they had for Colt McCoy, Garrett probably stays at Texas and, the bottom doesn't completely fall out. If, they kind of would have just turned and I heard from players at this time, Rod, when David Ash was there, because it was Ash and Case McCoy in the back and forth. I heard from plenty of players who said, I wish the coaches would just stick with Ash and just go with it. Let him sink or swim. Let him ride, because we're tired of doing the 2 quarterback thing. So, again, had those two been at Texas at different times, their careers could have ended very, very different than they did.
Yeah. No, we had Case on earlier and David Ash on earlier on Third Long. Interesting to hear both of those guys kind of talk about that time period at Texas, because there were really highs and lows for both of those guys. But to your point about Garrett Gilbert and CB, yes, I asked him about that Beyonce photo. I did. I asked him about the Beyonce photo. You got to go back and go hear his answer. But I just want to know, was he aware of it? Because for me, it would still be my screensaver today. if Beyonce had my jersey on, or at least the jersey that I wore at Texas on during the time where I wore it. Oh man, you wouldn't hear the end of it. It'd be back there somewhere. It'd be up on the wall right there. Picture of Beyonce. Yeah, so David Ash a lot more humble than myself. He's got some humility. So he did talk about it. So yeah, he is aware of it, and it's still very flattering. And I don't know, somebody should have asked Beyonce, did she wear it? Was she aware of David Ash, or did she just want a Texas jersey? And somebody was like, hey, here's a Texas jersey. A really
don't ask Beyonce. Just keep the illusion that she was a David Ash fan, and just don't ruin it. Don't ruin the bit.
That's what you got to do. She's in my jersey.
I agree with Jeff. I never want to know the answer because I assume she's just she's a closet David Ash fan, and she just couldn't help herself. She had to wear the jersey.
Don't ask a question you are not prepared to hear the answer to.
Agreed. But to that point about Garrett Gilbert, though, guys went into the league in 2014. And I think he was like a practice squad guy or whatever in 2014 for the St. Louis Rams. Then went to the Patriots. 2014, 2015, then the Lions, 2015, Oakland Raiders, 2015-16, Carolina Panthers, 17 and 18, Orlando Apollos in 2019, Cleveland Browns, 2019-20, Dallas Cowboys, 20, New England Patriots in 2021, Washington football team in 2021 as well, Las Vegas in 2022, and the Patriots in 2022.
Belichick kept bringing him back over and over, man.
Belichick liked him. Yeah, Belichick brought him back a couple of times, and I mean he was a journeyman, but he had enough talent where if you had a hole on your roster at quarterback, he came up on your board somewhere like, hey, that Garrett Gilbert kid, he's available. Yeah, I think so. Bring him in, man. We need a QB, we need an emergency quarterback, whatever. So give the man credit. That ain't easy. It ain't easy to stick in the league from 2014 to 2022. I don't give a damn what position you play.
CJ, you remember the COVID year game he started for the Cowboys?
I couldn't even stick holding clipboards. All right, it ain't easy to do that to stick in the league. I'm telling you, it's hard.
The wheels off pandemic season. Garrett started a game for the Cowboys. CJ, you're a Cowboys fan. You probably remember. Like he damn near beat the Steelers. Like he threw for, it was like over 300. He had a crazy good day. His one start with the Cowboys.
Yeah, it's always interesting how the life of a backup, like basically a career backup, goes in the NFL at the quarterback position, because it's either a guy that lit it up in college but didn't have, whether it be like the mental quickness to process at the quarterback spot from a week-to-week basis, or you go find a former five-star guy and that, hey, maybe they didn't have, the skills per se, but the talent's there, right? They weren't a great quarterback, but they could throw a pretty out route when needed to. Mm-hmm. I think the guy right now that's coming to mind is the current day of 5 stars, Tanner McKee. No one's heard of him since he was a senior in high school, right? He was a 5-star, top 3, top 4 guy in the entire country. Goes to Stanford, kind of rots away up there on the West Coast.
Yeah.
Just won a Super Bowl as a backup for the Eagles. So you take those careers, and then you see, obviously, like the Colt McCoys, lights it up at Texas. He goes out. It doesn't necessarily work at his first stop, but a spot starter tube keeps him in the league for 2 or 3 years at a time.
That's a great point, CJ, because Davis Mills is kind of like that. Like, it's just you had the high ceiling. You may never reach it and never could reach it potentially in terms of the expectations and the evaluations, but in the league they see that upside and they'll still consider. That's a great point. That is a tried and true formula, I believe, because I can think of a few guys off the top of my head that took
Kyle
that
Allen.
route. Kyle Allen's another one. Yep.
Yeah, that's a good one. He's still in the league. I mean, maybe there's still hope for a DJ Uiagalelei. Hey, who knows?
Rhett Bomar lasted in the league longer than you might think.
Yeah.
Shout out Brian Robinson, by the way.
Yeah. No, it is. I think that's a good point, CJ. I agree with you. All right. I know we started off kind of random topics. That's how the show goes. You can throw out any random topic you like, and we'll address it as well. I got some things that I want to get into, guys, but and that's actually, I would shout out to Texas. They had a lot of guys on the Walter Camp preseason award watch list. I want to get to that. Also, there was a statement about Paul Feinbaum that was it was a hot take, to say the least. I want to get into that too about Arch Manning. We'll dive into that topic coming up. And of course, top of mind is recruiting. So I want to start there because I know a lot of Longhorn fans, that is top of mind for them. CJ's pumped about it. Derek wants to know, is it going to be a good week for the Longhorns? Simple. Is it going to be a good week for the Longhorns? Because the Longhorns don't get at least a little momentum this week. And I'm not saying that it's going to make or break the class, because I think Texas will close strong. That's what they always do. But I read Longhorn fans are going to get anxious if they don't get a little momentum, a little boost, a little taste this week, a little something.
I think Texas fans might already be at the point of a little anxiety, a little bit of uneasiness, kind of nervous, or just not sitting right. Maybe they're not sleeping well because of how the recruiting trail has been for them the last week of June. Of course, you felt pretty good on June 22nd, right? You land a 5-star from California. Richard Wesley jumps in the fold. You're sitting around looking at what was about the start of a span of 18 commitments over the next 18 days. And it hadn't been a plan so far. And it might get worse before it gets better, but we'll see. July 4th, only a few days away. And I know that we believe that here at OTF, good news will be coming on July 4th. Of course, Felix Ojo now committing on July 4th. John Turntine committing on July 4th. There are a few others there as well. We'll see if Texas ends up falling in favor of those guys. But interestingly enough, I mentioned this on the recruiting breakdown earlier with Jeff and Jerry. But Rod, Texas and Kyle Flood, three of the 5 cycles that he's been at Texas, he's landed multiple offensive linemen in a single class on the same day this week of the year. I thought it was pretty interesting.
Wow.
You go back to 2021, July 2nd, Cole Hudson, Connor Robertson commit on the same day. You go the very next year, June 26, 2022, and he's got 4. Basically the entire class jumps in the fold. That's Trevor Gooseby, Andre Kojo, Jaden Chapman, right. Connor Stroh. Hey, that's a pretty good day. Now let's see if he's able to do just that once again, July 4th of 2025 with Ojo and Turntine. Again, we feel pretty good about where Texas sits with the two of them. And then, of course, Kosi Okpala still leaning towards the Longhorns in my eyes. Penn State, not a team to keep to look at lightly, but I think Texas is in a good spot for him as well.
All right. That's a nice find about getting multiple O linemen on the same day in multiple classes. That is a freaky stat. That can't be a coincidence. That's a trend right there. Ain't no doubt about it. All right. Let's thank our first sponsor of the evening before we dive into some more questions and topics. Let's thank our friend Andy Ludicky. We appreciate him and his team for being a part of our team here at On Texas Football. If you're looking to diversify, you may be someone like myself who has their hands in different businesses. Well, Andy and his team can take you through a very detailed process that will help you find different businesses that will fit your time allotment and your financial goals. If you've been stuck in the corporate rat race with 2 weeks PTO and no control over the money you can make or your schedule in general, call Andy today to reach out to him today, and he'll take you through a process to help you find a business that will fit your skill sets and your financial goals. Franchise ownership isn't for everyone, but if you have a desire to take control of your financial destiny, call Andy today at 404-973-9901. That's 404-973-9901, or reach out at Andy@myperfectfranchise.net. That's Andy@myperfectfranchise.net. And we really appreciate Andy Ludicky and his team for being a part of our team here at On Texas Football and sponsoring our Tuesday night live stream. All right. Joshy here says random topic. CJ, how's the Tinder game? How's the Tinder game going, CJ?
Joshy, come on.
Wow. Yeah, see?
Come on, no faith in the boy.
Yeah. See, I would say this. I missed the entire space age dating era. I kind of just missed the dating app era. I really did. I still I think right when I met my wife, it started blowing up. Right when I met my wife. So I missed it. And honestly, I'm thankful for it because it's too easy. It's too easy for y'all, man. It's too easy, CJ. All right. You need to learn that hardcore rejection and that anxiety that Jeff and I had to deal with walking all the way across the room to a random person that you never met and just having to go spit game old fashioned way. And that builds character. There's just a lot of rejection involved.
That's absolutely it. Look,
yeah. See, Tinder is too easy. Y'all can, you get.
I like the recruiting battles, Rod.
Face, not rejected.
Yeah.
Face.
Okay. I like those recruiting battles where you got to battle it out with the other, national prospects. Come on.
You want to cast a wider net. See, that's what y'all like. Yeah, you like Texas. You're going to get into those big boy recruiting battles. But like Jeff points out, you're going to lose some of them, though. You know what I mean? You're going to lose a lot of them, too. All right, CJ's Tinder game is on point, I'm assuming. I'll give him credit. I got faith in the boy. All right, Marco here says, with the anxiety in recruiting, how more important is the Ohio State game now to help flip recruits? Marlon Charles did commit after the Michigan game. Marco makes a good point here. And I think Sark knows the power of that game. And not when I say that game, it's not just the Ohio State game. It was the Bama game, a couple of years ago, and it's the Michigan game last year. He understands those big marquee games that Texas has scheduled now for the next, 7, 8 years, whatever that line. They got one every year now. It seems like that's a CDC kind of fingerprint. Like, oh no. Texas football, we're gonna have a big, sexy game. It's gonna be some ugly ones there too. Now it's gonna be some coyote ugly matchups in there at the beginning too. But there will be a dime piece of a matchup every year for Longhorn fans to get excited about. And if Sark wins that game, you got to show up for it. I remember the only one that Texas, it was thought that they weren't going to show up for was the first Bama one, and that was a spectacular game. Texas probably should have won that damn game if they make 2 more plays in that matchup versus Bama. Beat them the next year, then beat Michigan, and I do think it starts to it puts you top of mind early part of the year for recruits. The ones that you are recruiting that they're going to flip later, or the ones that you may have lost out on early, or the ones that you're still recruiting. I think it puts you top of mind for them.
I just don't think you can look at it in a vacuum like that, and I hope that's not what Marco's doing here. But it is so much bigger than that. That Ohio State game is so much bigger than just the recruiting momentum that you can get. I mean, this is one that if you win, you establish yourself. Forget what it does for you in the recruiting show. You can go into Columbus, avenge your loss last year in a Cotton Bowl, and establish yourself right from the jump as, all right, Texas just went to the defending champions' house and beat them. They are the clear-cut, number one in the pole position team to go win the national championship. So all that other stuff takes care of itself, but to me, it's don't lose sight of the bigger picture of what that game can do for the program aside from the recruiting momentum.
Yeah, I like that added value of that.
Yeah,
is the recruiting,
and I'm with you too, right? Like Sark, we've seen Sark. Some of his best game plans, some of his best approaches to games have been these early season games. So I have zero reason to doubt him that he'll have a really good plan on both sides of the ball ready to go against Ohio State. And it's really weird because usually you get, pick your random, group of 5, group of 6 school to open up with, then you go play that game. You open up with them, you get all of your blemishes, you learn a lot about yourself right out of the gate. And win or lose, that game should make you a whole hell of a lot better, regardless of the outcome, to get you ready. It's going to get you ready to go into the swamp. It's going to get you ready to go into Athens. It's going to get you ready for SEC play. So I hate looking out. Marco, I'm not knocking you at all. I'm just saying, me personally, I just hate looking at things in a vacuum like that.
Yeah, it's also winning for the current year of recruiting probably doesn't do as much because you're looking at, Texas already sits at 15 commits already before the season begins. These guys have already bought into the Texas program. They don't need to see it on the field once again. Now, it can work negatively, right? You can get coaches fired, position coaches could change, coordinators could move on, administrations look at their head coach and say, hey, this isn't going to work out. In that instance, then, yeah, there's going to be a lot of folks and, commits elsewhere that are going to reopen their thought process of their commitment. But for the most part, you don't need a Texas win over Ohio State to understand that Texas is a pretty good program right now, and they're moving in the right direction. I think when you look at where Texas is recruiting and who they're recruiting against, for the most part, a lot of that is the same. A lot of Georgia, a lot of Ohio State, Michigan's in that conversation, Alabama. Florida is going to be one where maybe they haven't been up to what Florida hopes to be in recent years. And a strong start to the season could certainly help retain some of their in-state talent, just as the way that Florida State's 2-10 season a year ago saw a lot of that talent leave Tallahassee. So it's going to be interesting. But, yeah, it's great for classes 27 and 28 for Texas to go up to Columbus and beat Ohio State, if that is the case. Not so much for this 26 class.
All right, Marco, thank you for the question. We appreciate it. Let's get to another one here. Says Kyle says, listening to the Ramonce Taylor interview this morning, that whole 2005 team had a dog mentality. He said they didn't care about anyone besides USC, that they could have dropped 150 on Colorado. Yeah, go back and check out that interview, because I've been hearing great stuff about it too, that it was fantastic. I'm going to go check it out myself. I haven't, but I've been seeing a lot of people's responses to it on social media. So great. They had the Raja Bell interview, I believe, on Monday. So go check out the Raja Bell one, because that was really good. I did listen to that one. He actually has been on the show before with the guys too, so they got a really good rapport with him. But yes, check out that interview. And they had Studdard on, it was last week. Mm-hmm. They had Studdard on too. So go check out that one, because Studdard always has great stories about that 05 team. And man, I think he actually told one. He told a great story to Bobby about the hardest hit that he ever had, that I did not hear. I had never heard that story. And so go check that out. I won't spoil it, because K-Star always got good stories there. All right. Thank you for that question, Kyle. Says, does this team have the that dog mentality? Do we believe they got the 05 dog mentality? I think I think they do have the dog mentality, but it's a different.
Yeah, I'm beyond. I think the culture and the on-field results combined with the talent on the roster, I'm beyond worrying about things like that or concerning myself with it, because I think this Texas team, you look at them the last 2 years, they're at the point where all championship teams get to, where you really do not care who that opponent is, where the game is. Like, lineup will play you in a parking lot. It doesn't matter. They are concerned with playing their best, and they know, hey, if they play their best, if they play the full to their absolute best potential, they can beat anybody in the country. I mean, Rod, you played on a couple of teams that had that kind of mentality. It was geared toward, hey, you knew the one team on the schedule you had to go beat was Oklahoma. I don't doubt for a second that this team isn't thinking about they'd love to beat Ohio State. They'd love to go into Athens and beat Georgia. But I really think Sark has this program at a point where it is really, they say it, but they carry themselves like it is a nameless, faceless opponent each and every week. They are really worried about themselves. And Nick Saban's best teams, Urban Meyer's best teams, though the best teams that we've seen in college football, they've got that kind of mentality. I think Texas has the right mentality.
Yeah. 05 was different because it was a collision course narrative from the start of the season.
Yeah.
Right. From the beginning, those were the two best teams. They were on this kind of collision course. And for this and for this team, and for when I played, Oklahoma won the national title in 2000. I came in 99. That was the standard then. It was pretty simple. It was like, that's your rival, and they just came off winning a national title in that new coach's second year. All right, you know what you got to do. So we did have, that at least, we had that goal out there constantly. Like, hey, we know what we got to do. We know what we got to beat. If we're good enough to beat that team, then we're good enough to beat any team in the country. And it's set up like that for the Texas OU game for the next 10 years or whatever, 15 years after that. But yeah, this team, I feel like it's a little different. I don't know if they have like that type of goal to chase. It's a different, like I said, it's a different mentality. They got NIL and transfer portal and now revenue sharing coming too. So different mentality altogether. Yes, the dog, but a different type of dog. But I don't know if they have that, that goal to chase out there that is that specific. Their goal, yes, they got the goal to win it all, but I don't know if they have a specific, that team, that's the team we got to beat. Maybe it's Georgia in the coach's mind. I don't know if it's like that for the players.
Yeah. Do you think it's also a little different, Rod, because of the 12-team playoff? Right.
That's what I was gonna say.
Because it was like in 05, you probably were looking at USC saying, okay, they just won it. If you want to be the best, you got to beat them in just the national championship, sort of say. Now it's all right, you can win the SEC championship. That'll get you a bye, but you still got to go play 3 games. So I wonder if it just making it to the dance. I don't want to like kind of downplay making the college football playoff, but getting into the dance is basically how you'll start to see teams approach their season. Kind of how Ohio State was like that a year ago. Let's start peaking at the right time and see if we can run, kind of run the table. But I don't know. It's interesting.
Yeah, no, that goes to Jeff's point earlier about it's kind of a nameless faces opponent. It's like, no, we got to play to a standard, and then whoever we end up playing, that's who we play. Yeah. So I do think it's a little bit different, not a little bit different, a lot different to CJ's point with the playoff.
Yeah, you mentioned it, Rod, and when I was stuttering and stammering a minute ago, that's kind of what I was getting at. Like, it's kind of like being physical or having good culture. Like, when you play to a standard, you shouldn't have to tell me about it. I should be able to see it. And over the last 2 years from Texas, I've gotten to see it. I'll say the other thing about 2005 that made it different was you got to remember Texas had that losing streak to Oklahoma. So, and
I was part of that.
They had just the Texas players in the whole country, they had watched that USC team beat Oklahoma like they stole something in the Orange Bowl that January. So, all right, you got to beat Oklahoma to get to where you want to go. But then after that, there's SC. And plus that 2005 season with the way the schedule played out, what was there after Oklahoma? After they went to the Cotton Bowl and smacked Oklahoma around, what was there to look for? There was nothing else to look forward to but SC.
Yeah.
Go ahead and bring up that question by Salty Q. Do you ever envision a day where starters sit the last week of the year or the A&M game? I think we all agree the answer is no. No one is ever sitting that Texas A&M game because, again, in a 12-team playoff, you're looking at two teams that were likely be on the cusp, if not right in the hunt for the playoff. A&M, look, they basically played for their playoff future last year, their playoffs lives. And obviously we could talk about their 3-game skid at the end of the year to bump them out of the SEC championship contention game. But that game's going to mean too much. And the one thing the one game that you could argue for that to be the case for a lot of these guys maybe sitting out to rest for the playoff is if teams finally look at conference championship games and just say, hey, we don't need this. This means nothing in the grand scheme of things.
I think we kind of saw that last year though, CJ. Like Sark has even said it, if it would have been a playoff game, Kelvin Banks probably would have played. And I'm like, you're at the point where you're in a conference championship game, and I'm not knocking Sark, but it's just weird to wrap my head around. Like, your All-American left tackle, the Outland Trophy winner, like the conference championship game is not an important enough game for him to play in. And it wasn't. Sark is 100% right because you either were going to win the game and get a bye and go to a bowl game, or you were going to host a playoff game the next week. There were bigger fish to fry. So I think that's something that's coming to just how they whole rework championship weekend. But no, I for the old school college football purist in me, I never want to see a deal where rivalry games are just so broken down and so watered down where let's just play the starters for a half and then pull them. Like, no, you want to, if you go to Texas, you should want to beat A&M's ass bad. And then go get your business done and then go on to what's next.
Yeah. Yeah, it ain't the league where you're playing 17 games.
Right.
And you already got your seeding in the NFL playoffs and that kind of stuff. So I hope it never becomes that either, Salty Q. All right. Thank you for that. Super chat actually from Scott. Let's get to this one. It says, any news and updates on Ryan Niblett? Thank you, Scott, for the super chat. Very kind of you. What is the news? I remember him going from offense to defense and them trying him at different places and the running back position at wide receiver, nickel, I believe at one point. I thought he could be one of the kick returners. I know there's got to be some reps available at kickoff return, or it got to be a little different to be a punt returner. But I'm sure maybe some of those skills translate. I'm not sure. What are your thoughts, guys, about Ryan Niblett?
Yeah, not a whole lot on Niblett so far this offseason. Of course, we talked about it in the spring, dating back to the season when he moved originally to the defensive side of the ball. That's where he'll start the 25 fall season. It's kind of in that nickel hybrid safety position on the defensive side of the ball. And look, that's a competitive spot. We talk about Jalen Gilbo either playing outside, playing at the star spot. You talk about Wardell Mack. I've been a big believer in Wardell Mack. And then there's also a number of youngsters that are fighting for reps at that same star spot. Will that be something that Ryan Niblett can ultimately carve out a spot just like he did last year in those 3-back sets. We'll see, but right now you're going to see a lot of his impact on the field in the fall in special teams, as many in the comments I've already pointed out.
Yeah, I don't. By the way, the fact that CJ is bullish on Wardell Mack, I love that take, and I hope you maintain it the whole way through, CJ, because I think you could end up being right if you're looking for a guy that could break out that maybe nobody's really talking about. But for Ryan Niblett, and I'm not being like sarcastic or anything like that when I say this. I think the most important role he could probably play this year is as a gunner on the punt team, because your punt coverage, your punting and your punt coverage have to be infinitely better than they were last year, because special teams did the defense no favors when it came to field position. You can't count on your defense being being historically dominant back-to-back years. So, or actually, I guess it'll be 3 years in a row now, but you've got to do a better job with field position. So I think Ryan Niblett as a gunner, that really could be a role he's in that helps Texas win ball games.
Like that. At one point, you might have had the best gunner combination in the country when you're at Keelan Robinson, Keaton Crawford out there at the gunner spot.
By the way, both those guys got drafted.
Yeah, I was a really good gunner too. I'm not even tooting my own horn. I enjoyed it until I got to the league. The league is tough with the gunner league. It's tough because they put more of they double team you more. They just try to cancel you out in the league a lot of the times, and so it's a little bit tougher. But I enjoyed being a gunner. Being a gunner is fun. Once you escape the guy at the line of scrimmage, oh man. It's just a sprint, and I usually that's fun to me.
You were covering punts in the NFC North though too, Rod. That's a little bit of a different beast.
Yeah, that's true, but still, man. And the NFC North is different just because it's a lot of outside games. Period in the cold. Chicago, Green Bay. Oh man, yeah. But it is a home field advantage. That's kind of why Detroit back in the day was considered a little bit soft. Not this Detroit team, but back then. Not Dan Campbell's Detroit Lions, a little bit different. All right, getting back to a couple of questions. Oh, you know what? Before we get back to more questions, let's thank another sponsor before we move on. Thank our friends over at Flat Creek Estate Winery really quickly. Our friends over at Flat Creek Estate Winery, folks, they've been winning award after award for the wine I've been telling you about for their great vintage wine, Super Texan, now available at your local specs. As a matter of fact, they took it out to the San Francisco Wine Festival not too long ago, earlier this year, and it actually won the best red blend at the San Francisco Wine Festival with a score of 98 out of 100. Talk about being not only the best red blend in Texas. We've been bragging about that for a long time, but it's also now one of the best red blends in the country. So you can find their Super Texan at your local specs, at your local HEB. But we've been talking about a lot of their great wines, and not only the Super Texan, but the Rosé is really good and very refreshing. The Pinot Grigio is fantastic as well. They also have a gorgeous venue in addition to making some of the best premium wines on the market. They also have a gorgeous venue with barbecues and wine tastings every single weekend. It's perfect for a day date with your significant other or a weekend getaway with your significant other. That's Flat Creek Estate Winery, just minutes from downtown Austin, folks. So you can get there really easy. I've been there myself. It's really it's picturesque. I mean, it is a very beautiful picturesque venue, and you can go there special occasions. As a matter of fact, we had a member of the On Texas football family get engaged out there as well. So no matter how special the occasion, they can accommodate you at Flat Creek Estate Winery, flatcreekestate.com. All right, getting back to the questions. Phil wants to know, y'all excited for our tight end room? I think the tight end room is evolving and changing too. I think it's getting more athletic. Sark last season played more 12 personnel than any time he's been here. And I do think the next step for the tight end position for Texas is to have more balance in target share. We've seen from year to year, it's just one main receiving target at tight end. Even when you play 12 personnel, which is second favorite personnel package, usually it was all JT Sanders, right? And Gunnar Helm as the second tight end got very few targets, right? So you're talking about your number one tight end, your number one receiving tight end, getting 80% of your target share or more. and I think that makes you a little bit more predictable. So I do think they want to get a little bit more balance. Still going to have your number one tight end, whoever that guy is. It's going to be Jack Andrews next year, this upcoming season. But whoever the number 2 tight end is, if that's Jordan Washington, whoever Spencer Shannon, whoever it ends up being, I think Sark wants to get to the point where you have a little bit more balance in the target share as to make defenses have to respect the other tight end. You didn't have to respect Juan Davis as a receiver because he just wasn't really he wasn't a factor in the passing game. Maybe once a game or something like that, but he really wasn't a factor very, very often. And neither was Gunnar Helm when JT Sanders was here. I think that's the next stage, the next step for the tight end.
Yeah, I like that. And again, we've heard some positives about Jack Andrews since he arrived in Austin. Arch Manning mentioned him at the Manning Passing Academy as a guy that, folks maybe don't know his name now, but by the end of the year, they certainly will. And you're looking at some pretty historic tight ends through Texas over the last 3 years, putting up record number year after year after year, saying, how can this room continue at that pace? Well, I don't know if it will, right? We do think, I think that Arch will target more wide receivers vertically down the field, but you're still going to have those designed and really kind of schemed up routes from a Sarkisian offense that are going to target that of the tight end. And with injuries, I think you're going to look at a more athletic option than a Gunnar Helm a year ago, maybe that of a JT Sanders a few years ago. But more than that, you're going to be able to pair him with a Jordan Washington as someone who is just as athletic. And I think that was always kind of the one-off trade that you had with Sanders is Gunnar Helm ready? And then when it was Gunnar Helm's time, it was always, well, is it Juan Davis? Is it Mari Nyblack? Can either one of those kind of give you the full package at tight end rather than just flaring across on a deep riser or, kind of chipping for a tight end or for an offensive tackle? Look, we don't know the answers yet, but I have to imagine that your ceiling with the two on the field together is much higher than what it was a year ago, where it was just Gunnar Helm essentially as the receiving, blocking, running threat that Texas saw from its position a year ago.
Rod, we talked about this a couple weeks ago on Football Theory, kind of the evolution of the tight end position in football, period. And, we thought, we talked one time back in the Longhorn Blitz days about a decade ago that, hey, maybe Texas getting guys like Devonair Clarington and DeAndre McNeil, maybe they were trying to replicate what the Patriots had at the time with Rob Gronkowski and Aaron Hernandez. And you saw everybody in football at all levels trying to do that. And then I think everybody realized pretty quick, like, all right, we don't have two unicorns like that. The Patriots just happen to have both of them. But I also think, too, when you look at the caliber of athlete that's playing the tight end position, I think you got to credit guys like Tony Gonzalez and Antonio Gates and Jason Witten, because that they've been the standard now for the tight ends that are of age now. They grew up with those guys. Right when we were growing up, it was like Mark Bavaro and maybe like Jay Novacek or Brent Jones. There was nothing sexy about the tight end position. Yeah. Because of Antonio Gates and Jason Witten and Tony Gonzalez, and then to Gronk and Travis Kelce and Darren Waller, now that the tight end is a sexy position, guys actually want to go play it. There's reason to go play the tight end position now. So I think now that if you're a 12 personnel guy like Sark is, and you thought about, okay, I want to replicate the Gronk Hernandez bit, now the personnel is more readily available to go do that.
Yeah.
Forget big Jimmy Graham.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Jimmy Graham will say, remember, Jimmy Graham tried to change essentially the entire CBA in terms of their definition of the tight end position.
Yeah, he wanted to be franchise tagged as a wide receiver, essentially, right?
Because he was lined up out more than he was in line. He was like, I'm out in the slot and I'm out wide way more than I'm in line. So technically, I want to get them wide receiver dollars. It's an interesting case. And I believe his own team worked against him, was like, nah, you're a tight end. We don't want to pay you like a wide receiver. We won't pay you like a tight end. But you're right. There was a time. Now the tight end position is sexy. And there was a time when it wasn't. Then it went through a kind of a glamour period. I'm not sure exactly when it was, but you're right. Aaron Hernandez and Gronk were a part of it. Like it was around that time. I totally agree with you.
And Marco's 100% spot on. I was randomly talking to somebody about this a couple weeks ago. As Jermichael Finley was well on his way as well before he got injured. He really was when the Packers started doing, Mike McCarthy started doing more spread stuff with Aaron Rodgers. Jermichael Finley was a really big part of that. And I feel like of the Texas guys I've seen in the NFL, the two guys that I really wish we would have gotten to see more of, Jermichael Finley and Aaron Williams had both kind of figured out where they were in the league, and it felt like they were both getting ready to take off, and then they both suffered career-ending injuries.
Yep. Yeah, definitely about Aaron Williams. He was right there. He had just signed it. He was just signed a contract, right? He had just signed another contract, and they had moved him to position. I mean, they had moved him around a lot, moved him from like nickel, moved him to corner. I think finally had found him a spot there at safety and really found his home. But unfortunately, and we talked to him on Third and Longhorn. Actually, like he was one of our first interviews, and that was a very like emotional one. Like it was, I think it was like 2 or 3 guys was like welling up. Like tears. It was a deep one. All right, let's get back to the questions here. How about this one from G? Who's Ohio State's QB saying didn't show up to the Manning Passing Academy? Oh, I didn't know. CJ, you were there. Was that a thing? Was that a storyline?
I don't think it's a storyline, but yeah, Julian Sayin didn't show up, and neither did Lincoln Keinholz, who. There wasn't a Dante Moore from Oregon, yet Austin Novosad, the Dripping Springs native, ended up taking his place as kind of the one representative from from Oregon. And I know that the MPA kind of prefers having just one quarterback per school. I know last year Texas had Quinn and Arch, but I think that's more of the exception rather than the expectation each year. But no Julian Sayin right now. I still believe it's Julian Sayin as the guy that's going to trot out there for Ohio State Week 1. But it was a little bit closer, I think, than folks expected in the spring when it comes to that battle at the quarterback spot. But I have a hard time seeing them put out anybody other than Sayin.
Yeah, I just am. The more I think about that game, I think that's, to me, looking at it this far out, that to me is the difference in the ball game. Is an experienced Texas defense with 2 of the best defensive front players in the country, with Colin Simmons and Ant Hill, and all the different pass rushers, the guys with pass rush capability that Texas has. We're talking about Trey Moore, Brad Spence, Ethan Burke, go down to the guys on the interior. I just think that's going to be way too much for Julian Sayin in his first start. That's asking a lot of a guy in his first start, his first significant action, to go out and deal with that defense. Even though he's got an elite receiver group, that's asking a lot of a young quarterback.
Yeah, it's going to be to pivot to like a little preview of that game. And Rod, I know we had that episode on the channel earlier about previewing the game. It's going to be really interesting, kind of that 2 or 3 week, build up phase before that game to go. Really, what I like to do is, all right, who are the top 10, top 15 players on the field for the game between both teams?
Yeah.
And then how does it stack up in the trenches? And do you have one team with an abnormal amount of trench players, whether it be on offense or defense, compared to the opposite side? Because I don't think either team is going to have – like if we were to just kind of free ball the idea of the top 15 in that game, you're going to it'd be Arch will probably be Sayin in there as well. You're going to have Jeremiah Smith. You're going to have Caleb Downs. You're going to have Colin Simmons, Anthony Hill, etc. But who on that side of the ball for Ohio State – do you trust to block Colin Simmons, or who do you trust to get around a Brandon Baker and a Trevor Gooseby? I have to imagine the transfer edge that they brought in, I believe, from North Carolina this offseason. He's going to be in that conversation, but how do they stack up the front sevens versus Texas front seven? And then also on the opposite side of that, how does the offensive line, because they lost a lot too. And I don't think folks are talking about that enough so far this offseason as we build up to that game.
That's a good exercise. I might have to do that this week sometime. So yeah, that's a good exercise. How many front seven, or kind of go to what Jeff always talks about, try to get to how many premium positions in that, in there, especially obviously lines of scrimmage, because that's going to be one of those games as well that the lines of scrimmage are going to be so important in that matchup. All right. Thank you, G, for that question. How about this one from Jedi Master Beaver? Anything on JJR at safety? Jordan Johnson Rubel at safety.
He fits kind of that a little bit of that position flex Rod the Sark was talking about on Third and Longhorn, which I'm fascinated by the more we dive into that and talk about it. It could be a safety. I think he's got a little bit of flexibility to play the nickel. Could be a guy that plays in the box a little bit. So the interesting thing at safety, though, to me, the wild card is, when, how soon is Derek Williams back at full strength?
Yeah.
If Derek Williams is ready to go week 1, maybe he is,
what a blessing.
then your top 3 safeties are pretty much set. Now you're figuring out, okay, how do you get Michael Tabb, Derek Williams, and Jelani McDonald all on the field at the same time? So I just think that's where that could be the difference between JJR getting some early snaps and still having kind of more of a reserve role.
Big nickel, man. That's how you get him on the field at the same time.
Yeah. I like that, Rod. I kind of look at the safety spot as almost a true batting order, like a baseball lineup, 1 through 9. I know Texas doesn't, but in my eyes, this is how I explain it is, Michael Taff is going to be your guy. Jelani McDonald, based off of what we saw the second half of the season, is going to be that guy. Derek Williams, based off of pre-injury Derek Williams, if you can get him fully healthy, he's probably going to be your third piece. Now, is it JJR? Is it Xavier Phil-Sami? Can it Jonah Williams become that fourth piece? I think is where I'm really sitting on really my unofficial brain, kind of how my brain works with these depth charts. But ultimately, what we know from a year ago is you didn't have Jonah Williams. So you got to look at when did you see Xavier Phil-Sami? When did you see Jordan Johnson-Rubel? Towards the back end of the year, you started seeing the staff put out a JJR a little bit more often than an Xavier Phil-Sami. Does that mean he's the guy? Well, I have to imagine going into the spring at least, he was going to be that next guy up. And I didn't hear enough out of the back end of the spring to say, hey, maybe they're trying to alter the duo or whatnot. But so I would go into this fall with JJR as my 4, Phil-Sami as my 5, and then obviously as Ellis Hicks, Jonah Williams is 6, 7, whatever else. So it'll be really interesting too, because that's a loaded room, and getting all of those guys some snaps early on, Rod, that's not an easy thing to do.
And with Coach Akina being in that room, Rod, we talked about teams earlier covering punts. Not to say that Jeff Banks hasn't done this, but does Coach Akina drive home the importance to the guys in the DB room? Look, man, if you're on a special team, you're a starter. And you need to take that job seriously, because there's been plenty of guys come through this program that got to the NFL, got drafted, that started out cutting their teeth on special teams. You want a ticket to the field? This is your ticket to playing time right here, is covering punts or being on the kick return team or being on the punt block team, whatever it is. So I'm looking forward to seeing a little bit of that return with Coach Akina back.
Yeah, that's a good point. Coach, he had a passion for special teams, man. He would go recruit guys from other rooms to go. To your point about making a tight end sexy, he kind of made special teams sexy, or made it cool. There was this exclusivity to being like wide receivers were coming over saying, "Hey, man, can I get on this punt block unit?" And he was turning guys away. Like, nah, man, you're not the body type, and you don't have the mentality that we need on this punt block unit. So to your point, I mean, yeah, he added a little bit of swag to the special teams for Texas.
Hey, we've talked about special teams unit and who's going to return, who's going to be the gunners. Who do you think the specialists to block punts are? Because I don't think we've talked about that at all.
They should have a bunch of those guys, man. Just freaky body types, right?
Right.
That could be a Ryan Niblett role too.
Ooh.
Just with
this pure pump block. Keelan Robinson had a few, right? Or got close.
Yeah, he did. No, you're right. He was, because he was fast like that. That's
Jonah.
King Crawford was like that. Yeah.
Jonah or Zealous, yeah.
Zealous is long and Jonah is long. Yeah. Long, twitchy guys.
Nick Townsend, if Nick Townsend's not getting reps on, if you just want a way to get him on the field, turn him loose.
That's good.
Nick Townsend is the guy that just go blow up the little wall in front of the punter.
Yeah, like I said about Jonah Williams, but I keep thinking about Casey Studdard against Oklahoma State in 2005. Like, if you're the personal protector and Casey Studdard's got like a 12-yard running start barreling down at you, like, what do you do? Like, you there's nothing you can do except like try to protect yourself and brace for impact.
Yeah, I gotta go watch that play. I don't know, that's a remarkable play by Casey.
Rod, is that one of the worst jobs in football, being personal protector on the punt team? That's got to be one of the worst jobs in football, right? Now that the wedge buster is no longer a part of the game, like,
let's talk about dirty jobs.
That's got to be bad, right?
Yeah, it's one of the ultimate dirty jobs in football.
Who Last year was Ethan Burke. I think Taff was in that group. Maybe a Gunnar Helm as well. Like guys that are around contact often. But to your point, Jeff, that's a thankless job too.
Yeah, and you see disaster coming too. Usually, you're the first ones to see it. When it's bad, you're like, "Oh no, that's got like you guys coming at me." All right, I got to try to block one.
You gotta to be the personal protector on a punt team. Like you gotta have a little bit about you that like you kind of live on the edge a little bit. You know, you gotta be one of those guys, but a guy that knows how to live on the edge without going over it.
I was about to say, a guy who's not going to panic. Who's not going to panic when he's walking the edge.
Yeah. In the old days, it was like the front line of your onside kick hands team. It's like you're not necessarily there to catch the ball, but you're making sure that there's some sort of wall for the guys behind you, which normally just means, hey, they're getting a 10-yard head start at you, and they're coming down, crowns lowered.
Oh, man. Old school football. You can't even do stuff like that. You don't even allow it. And they shouldn't, by the way. All right, getting back to it here. Doug says, gentlemen, do you think there's a strong player leadership on this team this year? Who would you consider the leaders on this team?
I'll turn this over to CJ because CJ's been having some good nuggets about this lately.
Yeah, I think you actually have a pretty good group on both sides of the ball and in different position rooms. We'll start defensively. Look, Michael Taff might be the heartbeat of this team. We saw that as he left the field in the Cotton Bowl. How much being a Longhorn means to him, and he would be in the NFL if he was at any other school right now. But he wanted to come back to Texas to win a national championship. And then Trey Moore, Anthony Hill, being both very vocal in that second level, and Colin Simmons doing things by example. Fun little nugget here. There's actually been some summer conditioning competitions between Anthony Hill and Colin Simmons.
Nice.
Running next to each other, pushing each other. And I think a lot of the guys see that and are like, hey, I want to be a part of this as well. So that's a cool little nugget. I put that up on Texas Football this morning. Offensively, Cole Hudson's kind of been that vocal piece on the offensive line. And I don't think for folks who have met Cole Hudson, that's a big surprise. I got to cover him pretty often during his high school days. And look, he'll get after you. And I think that comes from being a more advanced piece in a high school. But then you start to lose that as you acclimate to the college ranks. But now that he's, again, that big man on campus, now at center especially, he's certainly becoming a big vocal piece. Arch in that conversation, and Trey Wisner, I think, is a guy that folks look to I don't know how to describe it. He's not necessarily a vocal guy or one that will get on you, but he's a guy that will sit there, do the right thing, give it 100% effort, and certainly be around the rest of the position groups, regardless of where else, just be like, hey, man, I got you. No matter what, let's keep this thing going. And I think that goes a long way in these summer conditioning months where I'm sure a lot of the freshmen especially are sitting there saying, this sucks,
I think they got great leadership, actually. I think CJ did a great job kind of recapping it all, but I think that's one of the strengths of this particular group is that they got good leadership.
Yeah.
And I've talked to some of those guys, but they take pride in it. And I remember when I took pride in, I wanted to be a great leader, and I couldn't wait till I was considered to be a leader in the DB room. So I was, in charge of making sure that, guys stayed after practice to get work in, at film sessions, organizing the workouts in the off season. And I think a lot of these guys take a lot of pride in that too. So it's good stuff.
Yeah. On leadership, I'll go to Sandman's comment up here about Arch. That Arch is an alpha, so he gets Ellinger vibes. Leadership comes naturally to a Manning. I get that, but let's not fall into that trap of just assuming that Arch is going to be, lead like Peyton led when he played, or like Eli led when he played, or like Archie led when he played. Whether it's Arch or anybody on this team, the key to being a good leader, I think, and you see this in business or wherever you're at in life, the best leadership is authentic leadership. Like if you're not a big rah-rah guy, don't be, because everybody's going to sniff that out as you're being fake, you're being inauthentic, and you're not going to be an effective leader. But if you do have a little swag about you, if you do want to puff your chest out a little bit, then be that guy. But however you lead, you just have to find your voice, whatever that sounds and looks like, and then go for it. CJ, to your point about Trey Wisner, you describe that. I think of a guy like Puna Ford, like when Puna Ford was at Texas. Puna was the kind of leader that never really said anything. But the couple times he would say something, it was like, okay, everybody shuts up and listens, because If Puna's saying something, it's got to be really important.
Yeah,
So
next are snapping to listen.
Yeah, you need a couple guys like that. You need different type guys across the board. Sometimes the best leaders you have, honestly, on a team can be the lead by example guys. The guys that just they don't complain, they show up every day, they do the right thing, and sometimes those are the best leaders. And Rod, I think you agree with me on this. It also helps when your best players are your best leaders, because that's not always the case.
And just one more nugget, Sandman. We need a leader at wide receiver. That's on me. DeAndre Moore is absolutely in that position. He is the oldest in the room right now. He really took that next step last year. We had a very well documented for spring practice, fall camp. He was the first one there every practice. You don't do that by mistake. You don't do that for a guy that doesn't want to be a big piece of a team or lead by example. So yeah, that's on me. DeAndre Moore certainly deserves some recognition in this conversation as well.
Speaking of wide receivers, actually, Sark was speaking to Greg McElroy on his Always College Football podcast. Thank you, you sexy bastard. And he actually talked about he's really high on his wide receivers that people aren't talking about. He actually likes the fact that there's not a lot of people talking about. Thank you, Matthew. Matthew with the great graphic there. He said, I think Ryan Wingo is a budding star. DeAndre Moore was a really good player at critical moments in big games. And the addition of Emmett Mosley, this is a guy who caught 50 balls as a true freshman in 9 games at Stanford last year. Parker Livingstone had a great spring practice for us, and we signed a heck of a receiver class. He said, I don't feel good about it. I feel great about that room. Yeah, I do feel like, maybe we aren't talking about, like, DeAndre Moore doesn't get talked about a lot. Like, we don't talk about DeAndre Moore a lot. Guy's been proven. Ryan Wingo gets, I think, a lot of love because Ryan Wingo is considered, I think, he's one of the best potentially one of the best young wide receivers in the country. The addition of Emmett Mosley, though, I don't know if we discussed it and what his impact could be, but I mean, hell, that guy could end up being your third wide receiver when it's all said and done. I mean, Parker Livingstone is also in that conversation. We don't know who's going to fill that role. So, I mean, you do got 4 guys potentially that's a 4 deep room already, and that's not even including the guys we're going to see against Sam Houston and UTEP and all those games.
It's cool to think about the receiver group from this standpoint. DeAndre Moore is the only guy after this year who's draft eligible. So you're looking at this little 2-year block you've got with Arch as this receiver room this year. This is going to be Arch's group for the next 2 seasons. So the fact that they've got a chance to grow together and develop chemistry together, that to me is as exciting as any individual talent in that room. The fact that the synergy between quarterback and wide receiver group, I think is going to be there in spades.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think Sark's really excited about it, and I do think one of those younger wide receivers, I wonder which one of those guys, those freshmen, is going to at least get to separate the most. I'm not saying they're going to even crack the circle of trust, but which one of them is going to at least separate from the pack early on. All right. Thank you, Matthew. Appreciate that. Let's thank our friends, Mark Saunders and his team, for sponsoring our Tuesday live stream. When it comes to protecting all of your stuff, wouldn't it be great to have one place that protects it all? Well, here's some great news for you. Texas Allstate agent Mark Saunders is the only insurance agent you need. Everything from your home, car, and boat to your motorcycle, RV, and ATV. Call Texas Allstate agent Mark Saunders' office today at 512-218-8571. That's 512-218-8571. Are you in good hands? With more than 35 years of experience, you will be with Texas alum Mark Saunders. If you're looking for someone local to Austin, Round Rock, and this area here in Central Texas, give them a call, 512-218-8571. Thank you very much to Mark Saunders and his team. Mark Saunders at allstate.com is also how you can reach out to our friend Mark Saunders. Thank you very much for sponsoring our Tuesday live stream. Got a super chat here. Spence GPT2 says, if you could create your perfect leader with the different traits of previous Texas players, what would they be like?
I'd tell you exactly what I would do. I would go back in time. I would cryogenically freeze Vincent Paul Young Jr. and just have him at the ready whenever I had a leadership void.
Easy enough.
That's my answer.
That's not bad. That's not bad.
Yeah. I'd look right into that. Was it the 22-23 year? Just what Roshan meant to a team where he wasn't quote unquote a star player.
Yeah.
You can't teach that. You can't be a guy that started maybe 3 games as a true starting 11 starter in his career and have that type of impact in a roster. It just doesn't happen unless you put your heart and soul into it and you're like that 100% of the time. It's easy to come in on, a game week and be a rah guy, But unless you're doing that in summer, unless you're doing that in the spring, unless you're doing that in the winter, people aren't going to listen to you. And I think from the very get-go, the selflessness that he had, I have a hard time finding a more impactful leader in my time covering Texas than Roshan.
Yep, that's good.
I need a little bit though to your along with Roshan, CJ. I need a little bit of like that speak softly, carry a big stick guy like a Roy Miller, a Casey Hampton, a Puna Ford. I need one of those guys because those guys, Rod, you've talked about it. Just like Casey Hampton's presence just got guys in line. I mean, you say the same thing about Roy Miller. Did that? The Puna Ford did that. So I gotta. Good teams need a little bit of that. That one guy that everybody respects, but you're almost more afraid of him than you are your coaches.
Going across them.
Yep. No, I played with a bunch of guys like that. I played with Casey was like that. Aaron Humphrey was kind of like that. C. Red had some of that in him. C. Red, he as a freshman, C. Red had that kind of presence to him. So yeah, some guys are just natural leaders, but I like that. Throw a little Rojo in there. Throw some of Jay Witt's leadership in there because I think he was a great leader. Guys who are selfless and just great teammates. I mean, that matters. Being a good teammate is important to them. And I think a lot of guys on this team are being a good teammates important to them. How they support
leadership and selflessness. If you go back to the 2008 team that I thought they were the most complete team in the country, should have played for a national championship. That's what made that team special. Was the leadership on that team because you got it from Colt, you got it from Jordan Shipley, you got it from Quan, Roy Miller, Brian Arakpo. There were a lot of really, really good leaders on that team. Yeah.
Sam Ellinger was a good leader.
Yes, he was.
Bam Sam, he, you know what I mean? He we talked to him on Third and Longhorn. He had it. He's one of those guys naturally has it. He had it as a, youngster. He had to develop it because of some things he went through in his life as a youngster. And has always just been a great leader. And no matter what he does. So I would throw him in that category as well.
Can y'all imagine what the Tom Herman era at Texas would have been if not for Sam Ellinger? Not just in terms of what he did on the field, but how that 2020 team managed to keep it together enough to win 7 games. It's pretty remarkable.
Yep. No, and a lot of it is Sam and his leadership, no question about it. All right, we got some more questions. How about this one for F for Fake? Are there any players you guys think should join Young, Williams, Campbell, Lane, McCoy, and Nobis with the retired numbers? I'd personally add Derek Johnson. That is a good conversation. I don't know. I don't think they want to retire a lot of numbers because they just know what it. They don't want to, because once you open the door and then people start to gather a criteria, then they start to suggest, oh, you should retire this guy's number. What about this guy? What about that guy? So honestly, the truth is, you're going to have a hard time retiring anybody else's number unless when Arch wins a national title, Arch's number, they're going to save it for like national title winners, and you're going to have to win like all the national awards for multiple years to do it.
Yeah.
And that's just really tough to do. Kelvin Banks is probably in the conversation. He's one of those guys. Like that's probably your greatest offensive lineman potentially in Texas football history. So
he's the only guy who predominantly played, because you gotta remember since it's 60 days of kickoff, it's like Tommy Nobis was a two-way player. Like he played some guard too back in the day. So technically he was an offensive lineman that won the Outlet Trophy, but we know Kelvin Banks is like
so it's all offensive guys then.
Yeah.
Right? It's all offensive guys who have their numbers retired then.
I got a couple thoughts on retired numbers because I asked CDC about this when they announced a couple years ago. They announced they were retiring Taylor Youngman's number with baseball, which I thought was long overdue. CDC said that the criteria has and probably always will be, you got to be a consensus All-American and a National Player of the Year. You gotta check those 2 boxes. And I get it. You established that for VY because I think they wanted to retire VY's number at one point, so you need to establish some criteria. And it's like, oh well, Tommy Novus falls into that too, and so does Colt McCoy, and on and on with the different sports and everything. That's how Kevin Durant gets his number retired in basketball, and TJ Ford in basketball as well. I felt like I love that they retired Houston Street's number of baseball because the Street family needed something on one of those 2 stadiums to just for everything they've meant to the university. I felt like the Street family needed a name, a statue. They needed something. So glad that got done. I always felt, Rod, like they should take, and F for Fake mentions Derek Johnson. I think you should take the number 11 and kind of like Michigan's done this with the number 1. You don't issue that number unless it's somebody that's really done something to earn it. Like right now, I think you got the perfect guy wearing 11. Colin Simmons is a perfect choice to be wearing number 11 right now. But you take that number and you make sure Syracuse did this with the number 44 for a long time. I don't even know if they still do it or not. But the biggest, most badass dude on your team, if he's wearing 11, like that dude's a player.
Yeah, if only Colin didn't move to 1. You could have started something.
Exactly. I don't think the kids care about numbers like that anymore. They don't care. It'd be different in my day. Those kids don't give a damn about numbers like that.
Probably not.
They all just want single digits. They all just waiting to get a single digit now.
Because we've talked about that with the LSU deal. It's like who's getting 7 now after Jade, and it's like, oh,
exactly. I know. Yeah. No, I would love a tradition like that, but I don't know if the youngsters will be into it as much.
But Colin had it last year. Sam Ellinger wore it. Ricky wore it for the first 3 years. Derek Johnson had 11. Duke Carlisle, who's the first quarterback of the first national championship team, he wore 11. Like 11's got a pretty freaking rich history at Texas. When you major wore 11, so
that's fair.
It's got a pretty rich history.
Yeah, okay, I like it.
No, that's not bad. I like that idea. Okay, let's get to. I know we're getting close to the end of it here, so we got a couple of more questions, and we'll just end things. I had some topics I want to bring up, but
yes, I forgot. Colin Simmons changed his number to 1. That's on me.
No. It's still a good take though. I like the 11 take. I like that starting as a tradition. And CJ's right. We don't even know if 7 is a thing. Just who controls who gets 7? Can Huff Daddy be like, no, I don't want that dude. Like,
does Jade get to green light it now? Like
exactly. Like, yes. What is the deal?
They got to give you 2 thumbs up or 2 down. I don't know.
Next time I see Michael Taft, I'm gonna ask him. I've seen Michael Taft come and ask him, like, hey man, what's up with number 7? Like, what's the deal with it? All right, real quick. How about this one? When do they start fall practice? Texas boy wants to know.
July 31st.
Oh, that's beautiful. That is actually my anniversary.
Oh.
I know.
I
gotta remember. I'm glad we just talked about that right now, because that was a really good chance that would completely slipped my mind. Oh, good job! I gotta put that in the phone right now. Okay. What team on OU schedule or OU schedule pre-shootout is most likely to shut down Mateer, Michigan, or Auburn? That is a good question. I can't wait to watch Mateer, honestly, because the whole question is right now, can he play at that level against SEC caliber talent? Because if he can, guys, he's going to play. He's one of the best quarterbacks in the country. If his game translates, he's going to be one of the best QBs in the country. Nobody really knows if it's going to translate or not.
I'll tell you this. I think it's going to be Michigan. I think they're in for a bounce back after a year ago. I'm also I know this is a bad take. Thank you, Matthew, for the schedule. It won't be Illinois State. It won't be Temple. Temple's going to be bad again. Kent State bad. Auburn or Michigan, who do I believe in more? It's going to be Michigan, and I don't think it matters who the quarterback is. I'm to the point now where Auburn's in that A&M category for me, and I know they won a national championship with Cam Newton, but you could go ahead and pencil them in for anything from 5-7 to about maybe 8-4, and I'd just be like, yeah, that's probably who they're going to be, or who they'll be this year, and who they're going to be for the next 20 years, because they'll just always live in Alabama's shadow. I don't know. I don't take Auburn very seriously or as a threat in college football. And I know playing in Auburn is very difficult, but they're just a school that I just don't pay any mind to.
Michigan did lose a lot on defense, though.
It's true. But like 4 or 5 guys drafted from that defense alone, right?
But to CJ's point, I'd still trust Michigan. Auburn is one that I just don't. I've been burned in pick'ems and various contests over the years, work related. Like I can't pick Auburn. I can't take Auburn seriously as a team that like, oh, let's have some expectations. Like, no, it's going to be completely wheels off one way or the other. Either they're going to be like 4-8 and Hugh Freeze is getting fired, or they'll be like, man, Auburn's got a chance to go to the SEC championship game. Like it's never just like a blah season at Auburn.
No. Auburn's like dating. It's like a bad relationship. Like it's never boring, but it's never stable.
Yeah. Could Jackson Arnold be this the guy that brings some confidence back to that offense? We'll see. Yeah. But it would be kind of humorous if OU lost to a guy that they drove out of town.
That'd be insult to injury for real. Splendid Daddy with a super chat says, couple of drinks in. You know what?
Happy Tuesday.
I was about to say 8:30. As soon as we step off of here, I might join you, Splendid Daddy. Thank you for the super chats. Very kind of you. Last couple of questions here. Jedi Master Bevo says, who walks out for the coin flip in Columbus with Hill and Taft?
Great question.
I think they like Trey Wisner. I think he thinks Trey Wisner is a great leader for them and leads by example, to Jeff's point. Like as a guy that, plays special teams, contributed any way he could have, and basically did everything the coaches needed and wanted and asked of him. And now is flourishing. I think the coaches like those guys out there as examples. Taft is also that kind of example too. So he's one of them for sure.
Yep.
I kind of like that quad group of what Sandman just put out. Hill, Simmons, Taft, and Manning. But I think you've got to go with the big body somewhere. I just don't know who it is.
Oh, that's good.
You talk about the intimidation, right? I don't know if that's actually a thing or not. Folks back in the day used to have those stories about walking up and seeing like those 2000 Miami teams and just feeling like, we're in for a long night, stuff like that. Like I couldn't imagine walking up and seeing Ndamukong Suh at the handshake line, just being like, all right, like I'm ready for this,
Yeah,
so I don't know. I don't know if it's going to be DJ. I don't know if Trevor Gooseby could sneak into that, or Cole Hudson. It'll be interesting, but I would start with those four.
Was that the Baylor Michigan State Cotton Bowl when Browse was there when they rolled out Sean Oakman? Looking like the Ultimate Warrior. Yeah,
I'd be trembling in my britches.
He did look like something out of a Marvel movie, though. It was crazy. That's a good point. I think for the Simmons thing, I think because he's young, Sark might go with the older guys. Mm-hmm. Now, obviously, he's going with the best players, but I think Sark likes to go with some of the older guys for stuff like that. Marco, last question: who was the best trash talker while you were at UT? It might have been DJ Johnson.
Oh,
DJ Johnson and Sloan. Wide receivers talked a lot of trash. They did. Wide receivers talked a lot of trash. I know Ms. DB saying that, but they talked a lot of trash. And then probably after that, it's probably the DB. So it's probably me and Nathan Vasher is probably in that group. Dakari Pearson back in the day talked a lot of trash. So it was probably the wide receivers than the DBs. Straight up. All right, there you go. Thank you. Let's again thank our last sponsor of the evening, our friend Andy Ludicky and his team for being a part of our team here at On Texas Football. You may be someone like myself that has their hands in different businesses. Well, my friend Andy can help you by diversifying your portfolio, helping you find different businesses that fit your time allotment and your financial goals. If you've been stuck in the corporate rat race with 2 weeks PTO and no control over the money you can make or your schedule in general, call Andy today and he'll take you through a process to help you find a business that will fit your skill sets and your financial goals. Franchise ownership isn't for everyone, but if you have a desire to take control of your financial destiny, call Andy today at 404-973-9901 or reach out at Andy@myperfectfranchise.net. That's Andy at myperfectfranchise.net. All right, I had a few topics I wanted to get into, but hey, man, we had so many great questions, so much participation. Really appreciate you guys for throwing out your questions and comments, and I don't think we missed any of them, but if we did, I apologize. Direct them to the gentleman over at Coffee and Football bright and early tomorrow morning. Jerry and Bobby, they'll be talking a lot of Texas football for you. Always have great guests as well, so we appreciate Bobby and Jerry, so check them out at 8:15, and tomorrow we'll also have another live stream at night, 7:15. I believe it might be the same crew here. I'd be myself, CJ, and Jeff coming on tomorrow. Thanks, CJ, for all the great nuggets and the insider info. Hey, thank you as well, Jeff. Appreciate all of your knowledge too. Matthew is the real MVP behind the scenes. Appreciate him twisting and tweaking the dials. And thank you to our sponsors as well. Thank you to Andy Ludicky. Thank you to Mark Saunders as well. We appreciate him and his ongoing support of Orange State football, and our friends over at Flat Creek Estate Winery, flatcreekestate.com. And thanks to all of you for hanging out with us on a Tuesday. For Jeff, for CJ, for Matthew, I'm Lifetime Longhorn Rod Babers. Until next time, hook 'em horns.